Okay. So while we wait for people, this will just play out in the background. Okay, so we are live. So guys, I'm thinking there should be one and a half and then 30 minutes Q&A. Like, I hope that's not too much of time. It's okay?
That's good.
That's good.
That should be fine.
Thank you. We already have folks joining in. So you can also have the question shown on the footer. So yeah. We just start in a minute. Just okay, guys, let's start. So, hi everyone. I'm Chantal, founder of the Finance Story. So, basically, Finance Story is a media platform for ambitious finance professionals and basically people in business who want to understand the Indian opportunities and also global opportunities and how can they tap into it. So earlier, when we used to talk about GCC, we used to always think about Dubai and the Gulf region, right? But in the last 1 year, when we talk about GCC, it's very clear that it's global capability centers. And several reports by Economic Times and the others have said that this is the emerging sector along with data centers. So together with Eisner Amper, we bring you a discussion with two panels, panel 1 and panel 2, where we understand about the GCCs, public accounting firms in India, what are the opportunities they're tapping into with regard to expanding for talent and fostering career growth for several employees that they work with them. So today we have with us in our panel 1, we have with us Abhinav, who's been the India leader at Withim. Hey Abhinav, thanks for joining
Hey,
us.
Chantal. Good morning.
He is joined with him in 2021. He was earlier with EY. We have with us Sumit. So Sumit is the founding member, employee number 1 at PKF O'Connor Davis. And he is the partner with PKF O'Connor Davis US, right? I think that's one of the unique aspects of PKF. He's one of the Indian partners for the US firm. Then we have Sumit with us, who's the head of office, Elliot Davis. He joined them in 2023, but prior to that, for 8 years, he was with Eisner Amper in the US. We have this Prasamit. So Prasamit is the COO of Sapro. Now Sapro is it's not a CPA firm, but it's more like an outsourcing firm helping US CPA firms set up their office and run their office in India. So we'll understand more about that. And of course, we have with us Karthik, who is the managing director of India Eisner Amper, and he's been with them since 2013. Okay, so this is my broad introductions for everybody. I will then dive into understanding more about you guys and about what are the opportunities you're tapping into and what do we see for public accounting firms in India. So thank you so much for joining in, everybody. And everyone who's joining on the live, and also who are TFS members and who have joined in. Thank you so much for your time at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. Feel free to type in your questions and we'll take it. Okay. So thank you so much. Okay. So my first question, guys, is let me start with Karthik. Okay. So Karthik, can you tell us about when did you enter this space and what is your current role exactly? And when you talk about establishing the firm operations in India, when did Eisner Amper start in India? What's the history to it? And of course, the kind of services. So these are my three questions.
Sure, Chantal. Thank you very much for hosting all of us. Good morning to everyone. And of course, we're not too far in the new year. So wish everyone a very, very happy new year from my side to everyone. So my name is Karthik, and Chantal, thank you for the question. I think in terms of Eisner Amper, I'm proud to say that we started our operations back in 2006, 2007. So we're the 18th year in terms of running. Back then, I wouldn't call that as probably a GCC. When we started the operations there, we had very, very humble beginnings, but we had a vision. We had a strategy of how we want to build this up, and we took baby steps before we started to run as we are doing right now. We started operations in Mumbai with 6 folks, and proud to say many of them are still with us as of today, 18 years onwards. And our journey has been, I think, a case of steady growth. In the initial years, as we entered the market when not many firms actually were probably looking at this from a strategic perspective. But that's where we felt India does bring in a strategy perspective, just not from the cost aspect of it, which everyone cost arbitrage, which everyone is aware of. But it also helped us out, and why we got into this business and why we came to India was the fact that we are able to service our clients pretty much around the clock. Client serviceability, and of course the talent that is available here. So that's our foundation, or that's our vision in terms of how we started operations back in 2007. And from there, we have steadily grown on. We started with our assurance practice. We then built our tax practice, and that's grown as well considerably. And I'll come to some of the numbers in a few seconds. And then when I came on board in 2013, we opened up our second office in Bangalore, and I come from kind of an outsourced and fund administration background. And I helped build the practice and build the team in Bangalore. And from there onwards, we have, of course, grown into other practice areas, including advisory, which is, I would say, the kind of the youngest kid on the block in terms of service lines. And then, of course, we have wealth management too, and a host of other ancillary services. In terms of numbers, we are right now about 850 colleagues strong in 3+1 location. We are just going to be launching off a 4th location in the next 30 days or so. In terms of our local presence, we are in Mumbai, which is our headquarters locally, so to speak. And we are in Bangalore, and we are in Hyderabad, and soon we'll be in Ahmedabad as well. And our teams have grown, out of said 850 colleagues, the major service lines, which I just indicated in terms of assurance, tax, compliance and advisory, outsource, including fund administration and accounting, as well as advisory, various kind of advisory services, along with wealth management. But we also have a big team of shared services, what we call shared services, which is basically supporting the internal functions of Eisner Amper. We all have all of that housed in India. And that's been a key differentiator in terms of building out the practice. We've been able to scale, whether it's on the finance side, whether it's on the HR side, whether it's on the marketing side, been able to build the team over here and integrate in a very good way with our US teams and US colleagues. And of course, the biggest thing I would say, the foundation on which we built everything is based on the fact that we are proud to say we're always doing end-to-end work, and the fact that we're client-facing. I think that is 2 key pillars that when I joined the firm, these are kind of 2 questions that I had to the founder to make sure that this is in line with what I wanted in my career. And that's kind of been the fundamental basis on how we built our practice right from day one. So that's the essence, I would say, in terms of how the evolution of Eisner Amper has been from 2006 to where we are today. And it's a number that we're looking to grow. But when you're looking to grow, I think it's just not in terms of sheer numbers, yes, 850 or 1,000, whatever the numbers that get to are an indication of growth, but also how we're getting up through the value chain, how we're able to drive change, drive strategy for the firm from India. I think that's what we are focused on, and that's what we're excited about, to be very honest. So that's a little bit overview, Chantal, in terms of Eisner Amper and kind of our journey and our history of where we are, and also in terms of numbers.
That's amazing. Thanks, Karthik. So when you say you've got a team of 850 in India, and what's the team in the US at Eisner Amper?
So, combined with our India colleagues, we would probably be just shy of around 5,000 folks. including our partners. So roughly, I want to say about 25% of our entire workforce is out of India.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you and Eisner Ramper, when you talk about the top 20, would you want to highlight a little bit about that in terms of
Yes,
revenue?
in terms of revenue, we are a $1 billion revenue company, and we are within the top 20. We are right now around 15th largest CPA firm, and of course, we have been very active in terms of some of the change that we have brought in. And again, we have always been, in many ways, first in taking up certain practices or leading the charge. And back in 2021, when we did I would say, a marquee event, just not for us, but also for the industry, in terms of changing the exploring an alternative ownership structure, we were able to do that. And that has obviously helped us by bringing in an external investor and changing the demographics of how traditionally CPA firms were owned and operated. And with that change, I think we were able to really fast pace our growth journey. And that has brought in about, in the last, I would say, about 3.5 years, we have, on the M&A scene, we've been very active, and we've probably combined close to about 20 firms of various sizes and scales and various business practices into our fold. And that's a journey that we are, and that's where we're looking to grow further as well. We are very active on the M&A scene globally. And that has fueled a lot of the growth that you see, just not from a US perspective, but also from an India perspective as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So Sumit, would you want to take up the next question? Would you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? We'll all go through the same question.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chantal, for organizing this wonderful event. And as Karthik mentioned, wish you all a very happy new year from me. Okay. So I would say that, similar to Karthik's background, my background has been into fund accounting as well, fund administration. Okay. So I and Karthik share a very similar kind of background, which is, I would say, very unique to CPA firms. Okay. Not many CPA firms cater to fund administration. We can count the CPA firms on fingers. There are hardly CPA firms who cater to fund administration. So coming from the fund administration background, PKF O'Connor we had a very small fund admin team in US. They wanted to, start outsourcing, or they wanted to explore opportunities of doing fund administration work in India. And I was with Morgan Stanley previously. Okay, so from there, I got connected with one of the senior partners in PKF O'Connor Davis. I got this opportunity. We started off, on a joint venture basis. Okay, but eventually, that practice, blossomed to a team of around 35-40 folks within 2-3 years. Correct. And that is, on the onset of COVID, we are pretty new as far as India is concerned. Okay. So on the onset of COVID, that is where, the leadership, thought about outsourcing, or, using India for other services as well, like assurance, tax, valuations, advisories, so on and so forth. So that is where, we started off with tax practice way back in 2021. Okay. And we entered the assurance side of the business as far as India is concerned in 2022. Okay, so in terms of the team size, we are close to around 200 folks in India, which caters to different domains or different industries, right from tax, assurance, fund administration, outsourcing, bookkeeping, valuations, advisory, etc. Okay, in terms of locations, we have currently we are present in 4 locations. In Mumbai, that is our headquarters. In Ahmedabad, in Chennai, and in Hyderabad. Okay, so if we talk about our growth plan, as Karthik mentioned, we as a firm, we explored we explored an alternative. We had an external investor come into our firm in November 2024. Okay, so definitely the next 2 years, 3 years would be a growth of expansion, where we would be looking at a lot of M&A activities. Okay, so as of now, we closed 2024 with about close to 400 million in revenue. As far as the global workforce is concerned, we are close to around 1,800 employees. Okay, and we are around 24th or 25th accounting firm in US.
That's amazing. Thank you. Prasad, do you want to take the question? Yeah. Prasad, you're on mute. Some still then you can. Okay. Yeah, Prasad.
Yeah, great. Okay, happy new year to one and all. Thanks for having me here. So, firstly, Sapro is the new kid on the block, right? We started in 2017 in New York, and they started with audit practice. And in India, we started in 21, 22. Right. And the good thing for Zapro is that, we work in a profit sharing basis, in the sense that, the location, the interlocation is a profit center. It's not a cost center. So we have our own P&L. Right. We work with all the top CPA firms as we talk, and, pretty much top 100. We are always in connect so that we can help them in their offshoring business through the outsourcing growth. Right. So on the headcount, we are around 500 people. And in India, we are around 200 people, entire Sapro landscape. That's also include one of our recent wins, where we are building the GCC for CBIZ. CBIZ acquired Markham, which is a $2.5 billion company, which will be around 7th or 8th rank. So we are building their GCC as we speak, right? So including entire base will be around 500 people. For the focus for us, right, is to help these CPA firms who might not have exposure to the outsourcing, offshoring, nearshoring area in the past, and they might not have deep pockets in the first go to really go for it, right? So we kind of evaluate them. So we start with a consultative discussion to figure out where they stand in terms of their journey and where they aspire to be, right? Based on that, we connect the dots and give them a plan. So we have various means, which I'll discuss a little later, right? How we go about it, the solution that we offer. But the whole idea is that we kind of run together and grow together. So that is what my background. Obviously, I started my journey in EY GDS. When it started, I was the first 100 people when it started the tax practice, 3 years there. From then, I moved to consulting, worked with various firms in the management consulting, corporate strategy line, and moved to the CEO line. So pretty much everything that came my way, I took it up. And hopefully I'm doing some justice. So that's about it for now, Shanti.
Thank you, Prasamit. So from what I understand, Prasamit, Sapro is basically, in a good way, an odd man out here, right? While everybody are CPA firms, Prasamit, Sapro is basically helping large CPA firms enter India. Like CBIZ, which acquired Market, is one example, which is a 2.5 billion company. So just to understand the context. Okay, Abhinav, over to you.
It's not only India, right, Chantal? It's also other locations. So we are, operating in Philippines, Colombia as we speak, South Africa. So we're global from that perspective. It's nearshore, offshore, pretty much everything we cover.
Okay, amazing. Abhinav, over to you.
Sure, Shantu. Thank you so much. Good morning, all, and wish you a very happy new year, and very happy and excited to be a part of this panel. So maybe first I'll cover about myself. I'm a chartered accountant and carry about 20 years of overall experience. The first 9 years I spent in RSM South Africa, which is not a typical location that chartered accountants go to, but I was there working with RSM. Then I moved to EY GDS. So my background is primarily audit. So it could be PCOB audits, it could be private companies. So that's my core. And for the past about 3.5 years, I'm with them as the India office leader. So about the organization, yes, it's a CPA firm. It's probably one of the top 20 firms stateside, and continues on the activities, right? We are trying to acquire firms. We are trying to build our presence in the stateside. So currently we are operating from East Coast and the West Coast at this point, and we are trying to build our strength in the center. So that's where we are in the central time zone. So that's where we are. And from a headcount standpoint, we are at about 450 in India, and globally about 3,500. That's where we are. And our strategy was, from day one, it's going to be an end-to-end work that we're going to do from an India office. So when we started off, it was not like a shared service where we had internal billing, finance, etc. started from India. Those service lines just started very recently, less than a year ago. So we started with our packs way back with about 20 individuals in 2020. That's when the COVID hit, and probably our growth also happened at that space. And from 20, we are about 450 now, catering to various service lines like audit, tax. Within advisory, we have outsource accounting, we could call it valuations, financial due diligence, forensics, cyber, etc. So almost all service lines from the state sides are being replicated here. And probably our goal is to still grow further. And currently our office space is in Bengaluru, and that's our only space. at this point. And along the journey, we did help, some firms like Elliott Davis, for example, incubate them and house them. And now, obviously, they're on their own. So, worked with Summit previously, and it's a great experience being in this role.
Thank you. That's amazing. Samit, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Wish you all happy new year. Thank you, Chantal, for
Thank you.
inviting me to be a part of this panel. It's a very small world. Out of five of us, I know three of them on this call. A little bit about myself. I started my journey with Morgan Stanley. I knew Sumit from those times. We worked together at Morgan Stanley for a few years. Post that, I joined Eisner Amper, worked with Karthik very closely and the leadership team at Eisner. And as Abhi mentioned that Vidam helped us to incubate in India. So a little bit about myself. I am a CA and a CFA. Started my journey post qualification since 2007, so close to 18 years of experience. Uh, a little bit about our firm. So we are the newest kid on the block, Chantal, just to correct you. We started our operations back in July 2023. We opened our office in Bangalore. However, the operation started in October of 2023. That's when the client service professionals joined us. Before that, we were mainly setting up the practice or the office, like payrolls, banking, legal, all other things. That's how we started our operations. So it's a little above a year since we started our operations. Again, everyone on this call mentioned about the reasons for starting the practice or office in India, right? And I think we have a very similar theme. When I joined the firm back in July of 2023, we were very clear from the top management that this is not a back office or an outsourcing unit. It is just another office of Elliott Davis, and any client service professional in India will have the same roles and responsibilities as in the US. Uh, and I think, including the CEO, the firm was very clear about the role of India. Um, a little bit about the firm. We are basically based out of the southeast region of the US. We have close to 9 locations in the US, headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina. Uh, with respect to the revenue size, we are a little north of $200 million. And in terms of the headcount, we are at 800 plus, including partners or shareholders in our case, in the US. And with respect to India, we started with 30 professionals back in 2023. We doubled as we speak. We are close to 55, 60 and hoping to cross three-digit mark by the end of this year, which is 2025. A little bit about myself and my role. Of course, I'm the head of India office for Elliott Davis. The role is basically a US role, but I am in Bangalore right now, setting up the office. We are kind of in year 2 of our operations. So in the next 3 to 6 months, I'll be back in the US managing the operations from the US, and we'll have an India office leader. We already have an India office leader joined us in April of 2024, sorry. So that's a little about ourselves.
Cool. Thank you. So now my next question. So now let's go deep and understand a little more. Okay. So Karthik, starting with you, what's happening in the GCC space with respect to professional accounting firms? What are the number of firms in the US that are in India? Approximate numbers. What are the firms you think are looking at India or at starting their capability centers in India or outside the US? So Karthik, would you want to start with this?
Sure, I would love to do that. And it's a small world, like Samit mentioned. I think we've all worked and we've all known each other for quite a number of years. I think in terms of, as you probably heard, I think from everyone as they did the introductions, right? I think the theme that is emerging is most of the CPA firms that are based in the US, at least I would say the top 20 definitely have a presence here in India. But I would even extend that up to the top 100 firms and even beyond that in some cases. All of them are looking to come to India or a location similar to India, whether it's South Africa, whether it is Philippines or any other locations. But of course, India still remains kind of the go-to destination, I would say, or the preferred destination that they would want to explore. I think that's the evolution that we have seen, especially, and this has probably come through from the pandemic days. Multiple factors which have contributed towards that growth and what we're seeing now of various size and scales firms coming into India. Like we talked about, like someone talked about starting with about 30 folks. There are firms that are starting with a much higher number as well. I think that's a trend that we are seeing that is in vogue right now, and it's also in terms of part driven by what the need is. There's, as everybody knows, there's a dearth of accountants and a lot of, and I would say students and professionals who are entering into the accounting industry, accounting stream in the US, which is also triggering the fact that, there is a lot of work to be done. Business is booming in that regard, but to service that business, you need people and you need talent. And it is not about throwing bodies in. I think we need talented people, capable and having the expertise. I think that's where India really comes in, and I think everybody has seen that, and I think everybody's gotten comfortable, as I would say, globally as well. With India sometimes be considered a kind of a black box. I think that has changed with the success that they're seeing with their peers or with everybody else in the industry, and that's kind of opened people's mindsets, I would say, and it's driven both from a strategy as well as a requirement that we see the trends that more and more firms are looking to India in one form or fashion. Some starting off on their own, some tying up with somebody else, and then kind of setting up their shop. But that's a trend that we are seeing emerging in terms of the GCCs. And I think the key point that even Samit alluded to in what I mentioned as well is, I think just not looking at India or the GCCs, truly looking them as GCCs and just not as a back office operations. I think that is one of the key trends that is coming up, and which is great for all the talent here, as all professionals here. I think it's a great opportunity for us to just not do traditionally some of it, what we're doing in the the back end work. Yes, back end work does exist, no doubt about it. But I think where we are adding up on the value chain, I think that's where the real differentiator comes in. And as look to build a practice, like with someone who's been in this practice for 18 years, what we did in year 2, year 3 is very different than what we do right now, and how we have grown in the value chain. In many ways, I would say. The benefit that we've had is that now we know in terms of working with so many different offices. We have close to 30 plus offices in the US, and India is in a unique position, I would say, a vantage point where we get to work with pretty much, I would say, all the offices in some form or fashion. And when that happens, you are basically kind of bird's eye view of the best practices, the processes, the best way to do certain things, and then you interact with different people. So it gives us an opportunity almost to kind of define the best practices for the firm. Well, we are driving the change. We are driving the best practices, not someone who is just taking things in from the US. Yes, that does happen. But at the same time, where we are setting the trend, we are setting the impact, we are setting the change, how we want to go about it. And that's where we are in our journey, I think I would say. And that's where pretty much most GCCs will evolve into that, including their own phase, of course, of their own growth. They're going to come there. But that's, I think, is where we see, instead of just being someone who is looking as an option, I think India is now becoming a kind of a front and center strategy for pretty much every accounting firm or who are operating in and around that space. I think that's the primary trend that I would say is emerging, and that will continue. I think, in my humble opinion, I do believe that will continue. But I think the challenge always is going to be, I know there's some, we'll probably touch upon it later in terms of technology and other things, but I think there is a vast opportunity for us to be able to do much more than what we're doing right now. And that will continue to evolve, how it's evolved from doing basic work to now kind of doing more advisory. I think we heard about it from pretty much everyone, right? Advisory traditionally was a business which probably didn't move offshore, but I think we have built these capabilities. All teams have built it, and I think we're able to leverage, and people are able to see the value, just not in terms, again, not looking at the cost arbitrage, but really seeing value in what we provide. I think that's the critical trends that I would say, and then how it has evolved. Chantal, back to you.
Amazing. Okay, Sumit, would you want to tell us a little bit about what do whenever we talk to every leader, they say India is no longer the back office; it's the front office of the world, right? And it's no longer about cost saving; it's about driving growth. Okay, correct. So how are you bringing out this shift, and why Why is the leadership in the US driving this conversation that India should not be the back office? Like, what's happening? What's your perspective?
Very good question. And as everyone mentioned on the panel, correct? The thinking, the philosophy has completely changed over the past few years. Traditionally, India was always looked at a back office place wherein non-core activities or data entry work was being sent to India, but no longer. And the reason, there are various reasons. If I want to highlight, like availability of highly skilled professionals would be one of the major advantages. Correct. Like, as you know, India produces a large number of graduates, right, in accounting, finance. Correct. We have a, I would say that we have a large number of professional certifications like chartered accountants. Correct. And in fact, over the past couple of years or 3 years, we also see people opting for CPAs as well in India. Correct. Okay, because the ease of doing CPA, initially people had to travel to US to get certified. Then it was Dubai, but on the onset of COVID, now CPA exams can be taken over in India as well. And CPS, people can complete their CPA degrees in 12 to 15 months. Correct. And the pay scale for both our chartered accountants and CPAs are almost the same. So definitely, availability of highly skilled professionals. The next point I would say is communication skills, fluency in English. India has a high level of English proficiency. Correct. And most professionals are well versed in English, making communications with US clients and understanding accounting standards becomes easier. Okay, the next point, what is driving this growth would be, again, as Karthik mentioned, was technological advancements. I would say that automation and artificial intelligence. Accounting firms are increasingly adopting automations and data analytics as well. Correct, to improve their services. And as everyone is aware, India's tech sector has seen rapid growth. Correct. So firms, GCC firms are leveraging that opportunities or availability of talent in India. Okay, to be more efficient and cost effective to deliver high quality products to their clients. Another point, if I can talk about, would be which is driving this growth, would be globalization of businesses. uh, the US markets have opened up, and that was not the case, like if you talk about 2 3 years or 5 years down the line. Correct. Like the US firms or the US markets, now they are open to explore opportunities outside US, and India being the center of those opportunities. Definitely India is at a highly skilled, this ability of highly skilled resources definitely gives an edge to India as compared to other international countries. Another
Okay.
point, yeah, so business models as well, like if I talk about offshoring, I know someone brought about offshoring and nearshoring strategies. Correct. Okay, so as I said, the global markets or US has opened up their markets for other countries. Correct. So that has resulted in adopting global delivery models, and GCC is one of the examples. Correct. So it's not about only coming or outsourcing work to India for taking the advantage of labor arbitrage, but you know availability of highly skilled resources, 24 by 7 workforce. When India is sleeping, US is working. When US is sleeping, India is working. Correct. You do your work, the partners or the directors or the leadership team in US, they come to the office in the morning, they have their work ready on their table, they review the work, they send the work to the client. Also, like the scenarios of outsourcing or sending work to India has changed, where India is involved not only in doing the work, but they are involved in end to end deliveries. Correct. They are also involved in client interactions, and that is a very important factor as far as employees growth is concerned. What used to happen 10 years or 15 years down the line was, employees were only doing a particular task. If I give an example of audit, they were only doing testing. Like if a particular individual is involved in doing testing, they were only doing cash testing, AP testing, AR testing. They used to not get the entire picture how a complete audit is being run or being done. Correct. But that scenario has changed over the past 3 4 years, and end to end work has been presented to India. wherein the people in India are involved right from stage one to the delivery, and they are directly interacting with the clients as well. So definitely, the leadership of all the GCC firms, they understand what advantage or what India brings in. So definitely the thought process has changed over the past 4 5 years, and that is driving the growth for all the GCCs in India.
Okay, cool. Thank
And
you. Sumit, would you want to remove the headphones because it's not very audible? That's a little, it's not very audible. Yeah, that's one
Is it
thing.
better
We
now?
have
Is it
this
better
question.
now?
You can just take off the headphones. Sometimes with headphones it doesn't work. So then I'll just
Okay.
move to the other question. Okay, we have this question from Hari. He says, Hari, thank you for the questions, and Hari has guided me in also drafting this panel. So thanks, Hari. So some of you had mentioned about an end-to-end approach. Can you elaborate how this model works best? Which services does it include? Client interaction, as Sumit said, yes. Also, have you considered how India can help in developing COEs, contribution to growth? Who would want to take this up?
I can
maybe I'll
take it.
just
I can.
okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
Samit,
Karthik.
why don't you go ahead?
Yeah.
Why don't you
So
go
I'll
ahead?
I'll just before answering this question, Hari, I just a food for thought for everyone about the overview of the GCC landscape, right? I think when I started my career, Chantal, there was a taboo where we all were kind of tagged as working in a back office or a outsource office. But I think that has changed gradually in the last 15 to 20 years since I started my career. And the inflection point was COVID. I think COVID played a major role in many firms, including the professional accounting firms, to change their mindset with respect to getting their work done from anywhere in the world. Okay, I think earlier even the clients were thinking, their work has to be done from the US, but I think that has changed significantly since COVID, and that has been the inflection point for we all seeing so many CPA firms coming in India and also the other GCC industries, right? So, I think that's an inflection point in my eyes where things have changed rapidly since COVID. Uh, and, that's just a food for thought for every one of us.
Okay, okay, cool.
And just to answer a little bit about Hari's question, when we say end-to-end approach, it starts from even pitching for a new client or maybe starting with your work on a new client as good as signing an engagement letter. Can everyone else on go on mute, please? I think there is some static. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So it also means about starting an engagement from the scratch, and till the completion of the audit report or maybe the tax return. That's how the end-to-end approach has been for many of us in the industry, and it includes audit, tax, even the advisory, bookkeeping, all other practices for that matter. Client interaction is a very very big key, and we will speak in the talent section, but that's one of the point which many people in our community looks for. When they want to join any other firm, they are looking for those client service opportunities, and that's what excites many of the people who are coming into our space now. So client interaction has been a differentiating factor compared to maybe even big fours. I think few of the big fours are still in that traditional model of getting the work done, sending it to their counterparts in the US. But I think many mid-sized firms, small firms who have opened their shops in the last few years, they have been focusing a lot on the client interactions from day one onwards. And all our clients, even we are the newest kid, right? All our clients have been knowing about our office presence in India. Um, and 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 again, COVID has changed that thing, because the clients have recognized the fact that the work can be done anywhere from the world. Of course, they have their reservations with respect to the data confidentiality and other things, but those has been taken care at various levels in the firms. That's just uh, my opinion on this part. Yeah, Karthik,
Okay.
over to you.
Okay.
Thanks, Amit. I think Chantal agreed with what Samit said. I think in terms of a process perspective, right, from pitching to the client, generating leads, getting the engagement letter signed up, negotiating on fees, getting them on board, starting off the planning, for example, an audit, for example, starting the planning process, right through the execution, managing any escalations in between, managing the reporting, I think pretty much doing. But I think the way I would look at end to end in a different way, apart from just what we discussed more from a process perspective, is also looking at what does end to end really mean. And of course, it means to different people, different organizations. It has a different context to it. But overall, also it means that if you want to do end to end, so to speak, then you need to have deep expertise in what you're doing, because you just cannot say, hey, I want to do end to end but not have the kind of the relevant experience and the relevant expertise. I think that's where the differentiator is. When you say end to end, it's the fact that yes, you will get the opportunity to be through the entire life cycle of a particular client or a particular industry, but also it means that you're going to have to be equally have in terms of knowledge, in terms of expertise, in terms of technical capabilities. You need to be able to cover the entire spectrum. You need to understand how engagement dynamics work, how in terms of financial aspects, in terms of billing and collections work, how it plans in terms of client profitability works, apart from just the technical aspects of it as well. I think that's where end-to-end really comes in when you say it, because people just look to say from a, mostly look at from a process perspective, but also looking inwards, how we're able to develop that expertise. And I think that's where the allure is also, and also the challenge is to make sure that you are adept, just not in terms of wanting what you want certain things, but also you are also equipping yourself in being able to manage the entire life cycle. And that requires different kind of skill set, just not technical, like I mentioned. Obviously, you need to have the technical expertise, but you need to be able to do, understand various aspects of it. And I think that's natural evolution, I would say, in terms of what we do. And I know someone talked about it and saying that no matter, I think Samit had mentioned it, if I'm not mistaken, that we are just at another office of Elliot Davis. He had mentioned it's the same thing for Rise Rapper. I think we have always had that. 18 years, we've always been very upfront in terms of saying, hey, this is our India team, and they are equally capable, if not more, in managing your engagement and seeing it through from start to finish in whatever aspect that you need and whatever help and assistance you need. You need to do that. And I think that's where, the question, the later part of the question, right? Have you considered developing COEs? I think we are, and I briefly touched upon it, because of where India sits in terms of vantage point for pretty much all firms, I would say, because there's multiple offices in or multiple locations that they deal with. They get to kind of experience the best of everything, and that way they're able to drive excellence. But I would say contribution to growth, I would look at it in terms of, I think we are in that cusp, or, different people are in different journeys, but we are probably already at the phase of building centers of excellence. But I think where we are probably looking forward and how we're looking for growth is how can we centers of transformation, and how we're going to transcend that, because you have built the center of excellence right now, but how are you going to transform the business? How are you going to take it to the next step, which is, okay, this is how we have been doing it, and we have the best practices now, but how do we define the new practices? How do we define new technologies coming in? How do we adopt those? And we want to be the leaders and kind of the who want to do the change management aspect for the entire firm, and how are we going to transfer. So I think from COEs is great, and like I said, people are going to be in different phases of the journey. But I think the next step I would look at it is looking at growth. Again, just not looking at numbers, but also looking how you're moving from center of excellence to center for transformations.
Couple of thoughts from my side.
Anyone
Chantal.
else want to take this? Okay. Yeah.
Couple of thoughts from my side, Chantal. I think we've started to look at the quality of the time, right? When you talk about a manager doing, let's say, 1,500 hours, what comprises that 1,500? Does it include a lot of team management? Does it include a lot of client management or stakeholder management? And what we emphasize is tone at the top, right? When we're looking at an end-to-end, we would want a manager in India, for example, if it's an audit job, to support the staff and the senior, right? And how does that happen? Only if that person is skilled enough, to Karthik's point, right? He can navigate issues effectively on the ground, right? Not wait for the US to start off and then ask the questions, right? That's how the model of the 24-hour model works. So we focus a lot in terms of that, because we want a growth part in rhythm. Doesn't mean that you are somebody who's going to manage 500 people. No, we want you to manage clients. How do you manage clients? But being more technically effective, be a good communicator, good negotiator, right? And those are skills that we want to invest in our professionals. So it is not an easy task, but we do have certain professionals who are in that line, and that's the path for them to get into the next level.
Chantal, if I can add, right? So from my EY days, which I moved before Sapro, right? So in EY GDS, the whole process, the value chain that we used to follow of talent and the cost, these are already understood, right? They're already done. We're doing for 20 years. We have moved beyond that. So in EY, right, the focus was in the end-to-end perspective is more on the go-to-market, right? So how can we build the GTMs, go-to-market teams who can work with the partners, right, in building their pitch documents and going into their meetings and getting the things done in India, right? So from that perspective, the go-to-market, which was slightly a little bit more elite, if I can say that, right, which is only taken care by the onshore managers, onshore partners, but that's not the case, right? Big Four, as rightly said, right, is sometimes they're slightly slow in things because it's a huge, bandwidth they kind of cover. But there are, I was the CEO for the consulting or 10,000 people. We have a dedicated focus on the go-to-market folks, right? So we hire people for the market to do that. So for me, the cost, talent, it's kind of given, right? So we kind of won it already. So now it is the next phase of it, which is more on the go-to-market and then bringing the product development and the innovation part of it. So that's the reason for me, GCC is moving to the GIC, as we know, right? The innovation centers. And that is the journey. This is the go-to-market, the commercialization of GCCs. We're going to enable all that. So that's where the end-to-end will totally kind of form up.
Okay, from GCCs, it's going to GICs, that is innovation centers, which is going to amplify the growth of the firms. Okay, that's a new term, but yeah. Okay.
See, right? There are 4 pillars, right? If you see the background for the audience, right? So firstly, when the whole thing started, it was more transaction focused, right? So you have more transaction, it's more cost arbitrage, right? That was more initially the initial days of the GCCs, right? It was not called GCCs, but that was started off. The second phase was more on service delivery, which was more like everything as a service, right? More on the output, not on the cost. Now, the third phase is where we are at, right? Which is the GCC, capability focus, right? Where we're talking about the building the capabilities here, doing it everything. And in the same time, we're focusing on the emerging technologies like AI, AL, ML, robotics, everything, right? Everything is coming in, which is leading to the fourth phase, which is the GIC, the Global Innovation Center, where we're talking about partnership. We're talking about commercialization of GCCs, and where we're talking about building the product development here in India. So this is the path we are going, and it is growing at the rate of 11 to 14% by 2023 CAGR. So this is a huge number, and I'm so sure we are on the right track for that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. When you talk about Center of Excellence, Karthik, what do you mean by Center of Excellence? If you want to add just under a minute or so.
So I think in terms of Center of Excellence, again, it's, there are various ways to define that. But I think in terms of where you are driving the process, where you're driving the best practices, I think in terms of an excellence, of course, is very, can be defined in multiple ways, whether it is profitability, whether it is efficiency, whether it is proficiency in that regard. But being able to say the best practices and how are we going to make that change and how creating a firm-wide impact in how you go about following a certain process, whether, for example, a simple task of getting us a tax return or a K1 done. How are you defining and identifying the best practice of how you set up that process, whether it is using technology, whether it is using certain other processes, and be able to define that, and then firm-wide are able to implement this across the board. Again, it's an oversimplified example that I just gave, but that's what we look at Center of Excellence, where you are defining the process and we are following the best practice. And to what we've already mentioned, like how are you bringing in change? And I think how you're transforming the current process to where it needs to be, and constantly looking to innovate. I think that's where the Center of Excellence is what we're targeting. Again, in different aspects of it, it works differently. I know in the accounting space, in many of the technology space, a lot of the firms have already kind of established that. And they're in of course, a different industry altogether, but they're in a different phase of their growth. So a lot of the technology firms and the IT firms in India have done that, and they are probably much higher in terms of the GIC route to what President had just mentioned. So that's where we are from an accounting perspective. But like I said, I don't think we're going to be too far behind in catching up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now under a minute, because we've got a couple of questions. Okay, what is the impact of your firms on the bottom lines of US CPA firms? Like when I was doing some research and I was actually talking to a lot of people, I was talking to Hari. So he gave me one example where he says Deloitte, the US team in Deloitte, 50% of their team is in India. right? And driving 30 to 40% of the US work in India, 30 to 40%. So it's not like adding millions to the bottom line, it's almost adding billions to the bottom line, right? So when you're talking about each of your firms, what has been the impact of your firm, the India presence on the US revenue? And yeah, that's from anyone who wants to start with it.
I can probably get started, Chantal.
Yeah.
So, from a Rhythm standpoint, what India is seen as a strategic asset, right? And when we talk about client work, we are talking about India first approach, right? Where job gets allocated to India, and then possibly, then it goes to the US. Of course, we are all our individuals are aligned to a very particular office or a niche sector. For example, manufacturing, consumer products, whatever be it. When it comes to the bottom line, what we have seen historically for mostly, I would focus more on the tax and audit service line at this point because they have been longer with us, is that the biggest indicator here is going to be our realization, right? It's not about efficiency, it's more about realization. The time that you've spent, how much can you charge to the client? And we have easily seen 10 to 15 percentage point increase in that when the teams have used India Office. So that is our success factor. That is our pitch for the other partners as well, right? Those who are still trying to integrate with India, some of the newer service line as, hey, this is your growth factor. This is how it can help your bottom line. In turn, it's going to increase your profitability. So that's our growth. And the largest factor here is also the type of clientele as well, right? I mean, we are not the big fours here talking. So obviously our clientele are different. They could be price sensitive. They could be sensitive to who's doing their jobs as well. Some could say that, hey, I want it done only in the US. Some are okay with getting it done outside the US. So all these factors play an important part, and we focus on the realization. And we have seen a significant success in many of our jobs where India team has been involved. And like I said, it's between 10 and 15% in terms of realization.
Okay. Okay. So to answer this question directly, what is the impact of, say, within India on within US?
Yeah, like I said, for the individual partners, you're looking at if you had, let's say, 50 hours of 50% of realization previously, now it's up to 60 or 65% as well, right? So that's the impact that we are able to deliver because the quality of work is on par with the US, and there's a cost
Yep.
leverage as well.
Okay. And when you talk about rhythm, say you said 450 folks are in India and 3,500 is globally. So what is your expansion plan for the coming years? What is the numbers, if you could tell us some numbers?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we are looking at stabilizing at about 600, 650. And like I said, the M&A is a continuous activity, right? And at this point, we are still acquiring many firms in the central region. So that will fuel our growth in the upcoming years as well. And that's when we'll also look at starting or expanding our office space, like, the others here, probably venturing into other cities as well.
Okay, cool. Anyone else would want to take this quickly, this question?
I'll just add one point, Gentle, right? So I would say the impact of GCC is just not on bottom line, right? So there's also the evolving, it's also on the top line. I'll tell you why I said that, right? Top line is about how much revenue share the GCC can get from the pet care from your parent company, right? In the West. So that is where you're increasing your top line. Plus how you're expanding, right? Let's say initially they can afford only 100 people because of that talent is expensive, it's not available. But by doing it in India, right, you're expanding your customer base, you're doing M&As to broaden up. So that is adding to your top line. So your top line is also getting wider. Bottom line is, I would say, slightly old school because obviously that like talent is cheaper, it is cost effective, right? And we have large talent people, like just for some numbers, right? So we have 4,000 CAs in India, right? 1,000 or 400,000 CAs in India, right? 100,000 plus CA forms. So we have the talent, we know that. So here we are affecting both the top line in terms of the GCCs, right? Both the top line and bottom line by various things, like what I've said, right? There is also the policy of standardization, right? When work comes in, right, we're just not picking it up and doing it here. We are understanding the workflow. We're saying where the gaps are there. How can you automate it? How can you do it more efficient? So for any clients that we do, the 30% efficiency is given, right? Be it in your deliverable, be it your chargeable hours, be it your enablement services, or be it your entire gamut of things that comes to us, be it in UI or be it in Sapro as a clients, right? So that is where we are adding value. And anything beyond 30%, this is where talk business, right? So we do extra. But yeah, this is what I have to take quick points on that.
Okay,
So again,
cool.
Shankar,
Yes, Sumit.
taking point further, Abhinav made a very important point about realization, because that is what we hear day in and day out in any CPA firm, correct? Okay, so there was a small project which we did last year. Okay, in there were certain clients in our audit domain where the realization was very low. Okay, and then the leadership had taken a step about doing away with those clients. But as a project, what we did was, we did a project wherein let's send the entire audit work for those set of clients to India and see how it operates. And you won't believe, after that project was such a success within the firm, that we did not let go even one of those clients, because our realization, which was less than 50%, ideally any CPA firms would expect a realization to be at least at around 80, 85, 90%, correct? But the realizations were less than 50%, and that project yielded a average realization of close to 80% from less than 50%. So what happened was, again, there were certain partners or certain groups who were not so interested in sending work to India previously, correct? But that project really changed the mindset of the partners in US. Correct. So definitely, such kind of projects, and if you have the right talent in India to do the right work, definitely can turn around, projects and GCCs.
Okay,
Yeah, I
that's
think
an
I would
amazing
add.
example.
I think yeah, good point. I think Chantal, I think the opportunity is just not in terms of realization percentages or profitability percentages. Of course, there's an impact that you make, and roughly about the 15-20% that you almost as a given, I would say, an impact that you would make right off the bat. But I think it's really development of client solutions. I think is what Sumit was mentioning too. It gives us all of us an opportunity to basically cater to a particular service or a particular industry in a way that we would not be able to cater to. And a similar example that we had, we have a multi-billion-dollar legal settlement claim that came through, and it is a multi-year project. And in the past, staffing this out of the US or having capability just in the US, we'd have probably not even taken on the client. We would have probably said flat out, just not possible to dedicate this amount of resources. But with the team that's available in India and the expertise that we're able to build, we just concluded phase one of the project. Like I said, it's a multi-year project. It's development of almost a new brand business line that is being able to possible or only feasible because of the team in India. So I think the impact that, and we talked about the top line, right? So it's how you create new business models. Of course, scalability comes along with all of that as well, because we have the talent and we have the large talent pool available. But that's where I think we make an impact. It's just not in terms of, obviously the hard numbers are important, but you are able to influence, like we said, in every aspect of the P&L, right from the top line to the EBITDA. I think that's where we are able to make a change and driving the solutions. Again, we come back to the center of excellence, right? How do we come up with the solution? It's because you're able to figure out something together and say, okay, this is what the requirement is. How do you put that team together? How do you put a 100-member team together within a month? And then being able to train them and get them ready and kind of ready for delivering quality services to the client. That's what kind of the advantage that India provides across the board, I would say, for pretty much all of them. So it's measuring on different aspects, but I think that's where we are transcending from what you mentioned, right? Just not delivering about just services, so just taking work and delivering it back, but we are able to be part of the solution and kind of delivering new business models that we are able to bring to the table now.
That's amazing. Being a part of the solution. Great. We can take this question from Vidhi. She says, what types of accounting and taxation services will be integral to a global innovation center? Will these centers offer a mix of compliance-based services, or will it focus shift more towards advisory and consulting-driven solutions? Yeah. Whoever would want to take it under a minute, if you could get this. Anyone?
I can take this. I think in that regard, I think it's a natural evolution. I think we all touched upon it at some point when we talked about it, right? Compliance, whether it's on the tax side or on the accounting side, compliance is probably where you start off with, but that's not where you end up with. As you progress and as you bring value add to your own career as well as to the client, you're going to start off with compliance, but then you're going to evolve into, okay, now that I've done the tax return, what is the more tax efficiency that I can probably identify for my client? And then you get into the advisory space of things, and then you get to the consulting side of it. And as our teams have grown, I think the biggest advantage that we're also able to bring is being able to offer multiple services to the same client. So I may have brought on this client traditionally being a tax client, let's say, but if they're going through some restructuring and we're able to bring in somebody from the advisory on the M&A side, it gives us now the opportunity to kind of integrate multiple services to the same client. And that's where the consulting aspect comes in as well. So I think it's a natural evolution that is happening, and it will continue, and it will happen more and more. And again, technology is going to take up most of the compliance related tasks, as we proceed. So some of those tasks are going to become redundant, and as those become redundant, it's a massive opportunity for us, for all of us, to be able to add value through advisory and consulting, and do kind of more, get higher up on the value chain, so to speak. I think that's the natural evolution that I would say.
Okay.
I totally agree with Karthik, right? Chantal, right? You have to understand the impact of technology here, right? So obviously compliances, things are getting covered, but the advisory and the consulting vertical won't be the same, right? With the Gen AI, ML, all of these things coming up, but these kind of fast track everything. So Karthik said, it's all about the solution, end-to-end solution, where we consult, tell you what's the problem areas, and we do it overall, right? So everything has to go hand in hand, and both of them I think, going to follow the same pattern.
Okay, since we're talking about technology, I hope, Vidhi, this has answered your question. Can we talk, Sumit, when you mentioned that a lot of the big fours and firms have come together and you'll have pooled in money to build technology. And as Karthik mentioned, it's going to automate compliances to an extent and a lot of aspects. So let's talk about AI again under a minute. So, yeah.
So, we are talking about, DAS, which, everyone would be aware of, most of the people, correct? So that is where, all the mid-sized firms have come together, correct? They've contributed, correct? And, that's a, dynamic audit solutions we are talking about, where we are using, most of the firms has already tested it and have already started using that in their audit practices, assurance practices. So, that is, it has brought in AI into audit practices. So some of the, simpler audit tasks or repetitive audit tasks have been, Sumit, or since they are from the assurance background, they would be able to, give more insights about that. But definitely, DAS will be changing how audit or assurance will be done in future. So, Abhinav or, Sumit, if you can just some highlights, or you can put some points forward on the DAS project.
Definitely. I think one thing, maybe this group knows or not, but Rhythm is the service provider for AI CPA for the DAS. So the entire project gets done out of the India office. We have developers, product managers, testers, everything done from the India office. And it's probably one of our largest projects. And I think that's where it's a unique blend of somebody being in an audit space, but who can also get that development experience as well, right? So we had audit manager who was very curious about this. How can I be a part of that project? And that individual was there. He was helping. Obviously, the development team doesn't know what is the risk, doesn't know what is materiality, what is a tolerable error. So this person came in, bridged in the gap, and he was also client facing at some point with the AI CPA directly. So for us in India, it was a unique opportunity to thrive, right? Previously, at least in my previous experience, it was more about the US teams training and developing us, right? But in this case, the India team is so ahead in using DAS that at current point, right before the season, our teams are training the US. Hey, this is how you do the documentation. This is how you migrate from your CCH engagements into DAS, right? So tables are turned around in other sense, right? And we are in a spot where we are having those effective discussions. That goes back to my point on realization, that goes to my point on productivity as well. Things have been great, especially using DAS. I think the feedback that we heard is it has reduced a lot of time in terms of risk assessment, because everything is in a single flow, right? You don't have to document multiple things in a different level, and it's much more structured, right? As an auditor, you'll have to think through in a structured fashion, and this software definitely helps you in that compared to the older version that we had.
Okay, how do you spell it? DA?
It's a DAS, Dynamic Audit Solutions.
Dynamic Audit Solutions, where mid-sized firms have come together and they are trying to find solutions for technology driven AI, stuff like that. Okay. That's interesting. Cool. Anybody else wants to add on the technology bit? There's so much about AI automating, and how would you look at talent in that sense? What should they be doing? And how would
I
it
would
change
add,
the GCCs? Yeah.
I think
The
how
way.
we're looking to change, I think, is that I think we already talked about, right? If 5 years back, if we hired, let's say, 100 accountants, currently right now we would probably continue to hire a lot of accountants. We hire 70 accountants, but we probably might hire now. We're hiring about 20 people or 30 people who are coming from the technology side of things, who are able to either be a business analyst or being core technology folks. Because I think that's a mix. Because as you're looking to build, and DAS is a global project. It's a very high pervasive project. But even if you bring it down to very very small bite-sized solutions that you're looking to achieve, I think working with the kind of role of a business analyst, and I know it's a broad term, I think is evolving, and we are hiring a lot more people because we need to bridge that gap between, like what mentioned, like Abhinav mentioned right now, is bridging the gap between somebody who understands technology and somebody who understands the business. And I think that is where we see a lot of change coming in terms of how we are recruiting and the talent that's coming in into some of the GCCs. And I think AI is, but I would say this. AI is probably kind of the term that we use, but technology has always existed. I think AI is the latest technology or the new kid on the block, and we've always had some kind of technology, but called something else back in the day. But I think it's always going to evolve, and that is. I think there's no different than what's happened in the past. The pace at which probably it's happening right now is going to be different, which all just again comes back to the fact that when you have technology to do some of your mundane, certain back office related tasks, it's an opportunity for us to evolve into doing some of the higher value add activities. And that also means, I think, from a talent perspective, is if you want to be relevant in the industry, I think you've got to be able to kind of upskill yourself. I think you may have done, for example, a lot of here people are chartered accountants. What you did 20 years ago in the CA course is not just going to be relevant anymore. You'll have to upskill yourself to do what the demands are going to be and how you need to thrive. Otherwise, you're going to become redundant very, very soon. I think that's where I would say, in terms of the talent aspect of it, but from talking from technology talent, I think is the ability to be able to transform yourself, to upskill yourself, and AI will bring in a lot of solutions. And that's no different than what has been when we had the bots and everything that had done for especially the tax side. There are a lot of bots that we developed. It's now called AI. It'll be called something else in the next next 20 years. But that's going to evolve. It's not going to change. It is not people might perceive that as a threat at sometimes, but I think it's an opportunity for you to be able to pivot and do something else.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Anyone would like to take this question? From the outsourcing, India, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam are a huge source of skilled talent. Costs have significantly gone up, and that affects quality and margins. In India, the talent cost has gone up. So, what is the panel's experience about how is this and how are they managing this problem?
Okay, maybe I'll just start with, and of course, I'll be interested to hear other thoughts. But again, it's not a problem yet. But yeah, maybe in the last 4 to 5 years since COVID, the cost has gone significantly up. Specifically, the people cost, the salary cost, the salary ranges have gone significantly up in the last 4 to 5 years. But we still have a cost arbitrage compared to the US offices, right? And I'm sure many of you will agree on this call that. I think the ratio still stands at 1:3, maybe at a mid manager level or something. Where a manager salary cost in the US we can easily hire 2 to 3 managers in India at the same cost. So the cost arbitrage still stays. It does affect the margin, but on a very high level scale, it's not still a problem yet for all of us. But of course, there are other countries opening up, right? As Vivek mentioned, Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, any other countries, right? Which are kind of posing competition to us. But I think it's a huge market. I'm just hearing about US markets been opening up, but there is UK CPA firms, Australian CPA firms. Everyone and anyone wants to work with India, or for that matter, all these countries. So there is ample opportunity in the market for all the countries to absorb that much of work for all of us.
Okay. Anybody else wants
I
to add
agree
to
with
this?
Samir. Yeah. I'll add in Shamit, right? So I agree with him, right? So it's not a problem, but I would say this is it's a better thing, right? It'll keep us honest. So if you see the numbers, right, from GCC, not from accounting, but overall GCC India, the per rate is around 10 to 12 bucks, right, per hour rate. Philippines, all of these countries are all in the late teens, right? So we are still down below, right, in terms of the cost that we can offer to the global clients. So I don't think it's an issue. Second thing is the ecosystem, right? The ecosystem that we have built in India, right, in terms of the colleges, the various companies in the system, is not easily replicable by any other country in the very fast way, right? So obviously they can give you some arbitrage, but again, that will be in the little low junior resources, right? But if you come into the little higher resources, looking from leaders, I think few miles to go. So I really don't see it's a big issue. But yes, we have to partner with all of them so that we kind of give them the nearshore perspective and give them the time benefit. All of that we can do, but I really don't see it's an issue, at least for the next 10 years.
I think I would agree to that. I would say that this is competition is good. I think having competition is always good because it's going to keep us on our toes, and I think we have got to evolve. I think these are, in many aspects, I think where India has an edge, so to speak. But of course, it's not a given, and it's not going to stay constant either. I think from an ecosystem that we talked about, I think from a geopolitical perspective too, I think we have one of the most stable ecosystem that we can have for organizations to come in. I think that is definitely, I think it's a big factor, which gives confidence. I think it's a tried and tested model. Now everyone is comfortable, and I think I would add a different dimension too to that. I think in compared to especially the countries that are listed out in that, I think and people on the call, and I know you have another session coming too. I think the availability of leadership in terms of GCCs and kind of similar organizations coming together, I think is a big differentiator too. I think it's putting a team together is one thing, but I think having the experience and the leadership, I would say, pool and talent that is available in various whatever organizations and whatever industries that they're coming to. I think that talent that is available in India, or readily available in India, I would say, is also a big differentiator. I think it's when you need to set up these teams, it's just not about numbers and processes and everything, but you need to have good leadership on the ground, right from the top at various levels. I think that is a big differentiator, what we believe. But it's an advantage. But I think we have to keep working on it. It's not going to remain the same constant forever. And as they as other other locations and other geographies catch up, we'll have to set the pace. We'll have to do other things as well. I think that is always good. I think competition is going to keep us on our toes.
Okay, but when you're hiring talent, hasn't the cost of talent really gone up significantly? That's decent.
That is definitely a case. I think it's a sign of progress too, because it's a sign of expertise that you bring in. Because why is the cost of talent gone up? It's because the expertise that we're able to bring in now. We all talked about centers of excellence, and we talked about GCCs and transformation. That's going to come at a cost, but at the same time, the value that you're able to bring, as long as you're able to provide that with the cost going up, the value that you're able to bring in, as long as that is in a healthy proportion, so to speak, I think there's always going to be value there. And I know Sumit had mentioned this very early in kind of our discussion. I think a big advantage that we have is also some of our soft skills and communication as well. I think let's not undermine that. And that's a big differentiator too. They're able to connect with primarily most of the US or some of the India and other regions. Our communication skills, I think, do help us at least give us a leg up, I would say, compared to some of the other locations, because we are so used, and the way we've been brought up, English is a very strong language, I would say, for pretty much most of us and the kind of the next generation.
And Chantal, I would like to chip in as well. See, if you're talking about doing end-to-end work in India, correct? So if you're comparing a manager in India versus a manager in US, if you're able to bring a manager with an equivalent skill sets and is able to do the same job, so even if it's expensive in India, correct, it's still going to be less expensive than hiring someone in US, correct? So whether the salaries are going up in India, that's still fine. It's always going to be cheaper in India as compared to US, correct? If you're going to have the same skill sets of a manager in India, definitely you will go ahead and hire in India as compared to US. So even if the salaries in India are going up, the skill sets are also improving in India. So I don't think so this is a challenge.
Okay. I think outsourcing firms do have a challenge because a lot of their talent is moving up to CPA firms entering India. So I think there is where the challenge starts for them. So, okay, so that's a different topic. Cool. We have another question from Hari. He says, some of you mentioned that there would be initial resistance to sending work to India. Is this a challenge? How are you managing change in the US? Any best practices?
I would say the best practice would be, word of mouth publicity. Correct? Within the firm.
Absolutely.
Correct? If certain partners are
Absolutely.
already sending a work in India, correct, and they are happy with the services, their PNL is improving, they're getting quality deliveries, correct, their clients are happy. So, word of mouth publicity, there cannot be any other, marketing gimmick than a word of mouth publicity. A partner in US convincing another partner in US, in his office or in some other office, use India. His experience have been excellent. His clients are very happy with their services. I think so that can be the best practice to be adopted within the firm.
Agreed. I would say, and I think it's. I would say that I would add to that is sometimes it's a simple case of fear of the unknown. When you don't know what India is about and who we are, I think it's a natural thing. If you're going to a certain location and you don't know anything about it, you don't have any history or past connections with that. I think that's what majorly most of it stems from in terms of for folks. And how do you bridge that? Of course, like Smith mentioned, I think there's word of mouth. One of the other things I think that has benefited us, I would say, over the last 18 years in breaking some of those mental barriers, so to speak, I think has been a cross culturalization. I think of people. I think having some of our team members spending some time in the US offices, getting to know their culture, their way of thinking, their way of doing things, and what's value to them, and vice versa too. Having a lot of folks, we actively had, or I can, probably the number of people that we have had, people from the US travel is probably somewhere, 200 people, 200 plus, who have come to India, who have, experienced it firsthand, talked to people, build a connection, understand the local kind of ecosystem, understand the local operational aspects. And once you get those barriers, I think once you build that kind of personal connection too, then it becomes it kind of really melts down those barriers in their heads, and then it becomes very easy. And then it's a case of intent. When you find that intent, and when the intent changes, you find a way. There are going to be challenges, and that's what we've told. A lot of expectation setting as well, I would say, initial, because when especially when the work is moving for the first time for a partner or for somebody in the US, their expectation is that, hey, I don't have to do anything and everything will be get done magically and everything will be picture perfect when it comes back to me, or when it's finally delivered. I think setting those expectations as well, I think, is one of the key important aspects. Saying that, hey, this is part of your team, which means that you have to put in the time and effort in training and in spending time in getting to know and answering queries. And that's how you build a team and you build a practice. And as it evolves, obviously that's going to change. But in the initial years, you need to put in that effort. You put in, as you would do, if you had a new team member in your, who joined us, who's sitting right next to you, you would invest that time, you would invest that effort in training and making the person understand the practices, what needs to get done. It's the same thing. You just got to do it. I think multiple aspects. I think in terms of what we need to do, and that's what that's what has worked for us. So I've let others chime in terms of what's been their success stories there.
Sure, Karthik. I think one thing that we have seen is, to add to one more dynamic here is, like we said, we are still continuing to acquire offices in the US, right? It could be from various cities. What we do is early on, we make sure that they have a team set up in India. So it's not that they figure out, then they pull in a team from India. If you are struggling for the initial 2 years, you do it along with your professionals from India. So that has really helped to a large extent we have this initial troubles, right, to eliminate those. So that is one. The second thing is what we've always seen is partner. Yes, partner is more like 30,000 feet, right? They just want the job done. They want the billing done. They don't want to have any issues on collections. That's what usually they focus on. The key decision makers are more of managers and senior managers who determine what job gets done out of India. So our focal point from an India leadership is to target them. Hey, help me understand, this is your integration with India. These are the jobs that you manage. So how can you help us, right? What are your challenges? Let us know. We will tackle it for you. So being more proactive, setting expectations for the season really helps. And that has been our success factor. And many of our teams are more than 30% integration, right? Effectively, right end to end, right from engagement letter up to billing, except for the collections. Everything gets done out of the India office. So that has really helped us. But yes, there are some newer offices or niches where it's still more. They are trying to test the waters. They are trying to, understand us better. But I'm sure it'll get better, and probably we are where Eisner was maybe 10 years ago. So we will get there as well.
What's also important, right? I mean, in EY, we used to say, right, 50% is content, 50% is aesthetics, right? In consulting, right? It has to go in hand. And in aesthetics, I mean, in this context, the marketing, right? In terms of the pitches, when you do the pitches, you have to quantify what you're gonna get, right? In terms of your realization, in terms of your efficiency, in terms of your growth of your portfolios, of your accounts, right? That is where you catch the eye, right? You have a win story, you have marketed well, go into road shows, meet, go, in the locations, have meetings. I think it's a lot of things happen. But again, like everybody said, tone at the top is the main thing. Right? Once you have the blessing, then you have to do all of these on a continuous basis to keep the machinery running. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Karthik, or any one of you would want to take about fund. How do you assess which aspects of fund administration are best suited for outsourcing, and how do you ensure a seamless integration with internal operations?
There are three people here who come from fund admin backgrounds, so I think all of us are equally capable and not a lot of pride in answering this question, to be very honest. I think I can go it, but I would definitely want to hear Sumit and Samit, because they come from they all come from the same industry. So in that regard, I think the best, I would say, the beauty about fund administration is that at least from a regulation perspective and certain things, there are certain limitations, but I would say for us from an industry and from a practice perspective, there are not many limitations compared to how an assurance and tax requirements would come in. So the opportunity lies for us to be able to do pretty much end to end. And the nature of fund administration is very, very vast. You could have compared to an assurance or tax or advisory, and an advisory probably has some shades of it too. You have opportunity to interact with the client pretty much on a day-to-day basis. In fact, you have to. So you're talking to the client, you're delivering services to the client pretty much on a day-to-day basis. It's not like you wait for the year end and things happen. Of course, certain things happen at year end too, but you have basically daily deliverables, weekly deliverables, monthly deliverables, quarterly deliverables. So the high level of interaction that happens with the client in fund admin is probably the greatest that way, because you're talking to the client, pretty much, if not on a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis. I think so. From that aspect of it, right from whether doing the investor services side of it or doing the core fund administration, the reporting, the client interaction, the resolution, I think, and I would love to hear from Sumit and Samit as well as to what they are doing. We do pretty much end to end. I'd be very proud to say, because we build the practice and we have the expertise here. The entire team for fund administration, pretty much, I would say 90% or 95% of the team and the work for Eisner Amper fund administration gets done out of India. Our core, because we have the expertise, we have the system capabilities, and we manage the client relationship from day one. Of course, we don't work the US hours, so during the US hours, we have client relationship managers on the US side who understand the business and who know the client. They manage it, but pretty much the engine and everything sits out of India. And I think from a process perspective, or from the length and breadth aspect of it, you can manage right from client review or client onboarding, and then of course we talked about winning a client, and we all do that, and review of the legal documents, doing the fund administration, doing their AML and KYC work, doing their investor reporting, handle their investor queries, working with in many cases our own firms, tax preparation, the preparation of financial statements at the year end. And as well as working with the audit folks who are depending on who the fund administration would be, making sure that we are able to partner with them and be basically an external arm for our client. And we do pretty much end-to-end work that you can say. And the length and breadth from a fund administration, when you say end-to-end, is far greater. And I think that's that I would say is overall where we have an opportunity right from going from start to finish in everything that we can cover from fund administration. I think it lends itself very well to be able to do a lot more compared to maybe in assurance and tax, where you have certain other sign-offs and certain other restrictions that comes in. But I would love to hear from Sumit and Samit.
I agree. I agree with Karthik. So I agree with Karthik. Yes, summarize the entire process very well. Like again, as Karthik mentioned, we at PKFO Corner Davis, we do almost 90 to 95% of the entire fund admin work in India. In fact, we are the one who defines the processes. Correct. And the folks in US, they are just, as Karthik mentioned, they are there during the US hours to just interact with the client or manage the client relationship. Okay, we interact with the client almost on a daily basis. Like unlike tax or assurance, we do not have any particular busy season. The entire 12 months is a busy season for us
For
because we
us.
have regular deliveries, right? We have monthly deliveries, we have weekly deliveries, we have quarterly deliveries. So like right from onboarding a client, getting lot of client wants a demonstration of the systems, correct? Right from giving a demonstration, right from budgeting, right from proposals, right from understanding the legal documents, whether it's the ppms, other legal documents, understanding the structure, advising them on the new structures, correct? Right from aml kyc to subscriptions, redemptions, we are involved in each and every step. Okay, till the time the investor statements are released to the investors. And again, even after that, if the investors have any questions, we are the ones who are responsible to answer those questions as well. Correct. So as far as the domain of fund administration is concerned, it's a far, the scope of the fund administration as far as India is concerned is far greater than assurance and tax. And we in PQ for quantitative is involved in end-to-end processes. Yeah.
Okay,
And I'll
thank
just
you.
and I'll
Yeah,
just
yes, Amit.
share for a minute. So again, Alert Davis do not have a fund administration arm yet in India, but based on my fund administration days, I think earlier the client communication used to always stay with the US team, and the execution or the production work was always in India, because Indians and chartered accountants, finance background, we are very good with numbers and systems. So that was the case maybe 10, 15 years back, but I think that has gradually changed in the last few years, where even the communication account managers, all those people are even from India, which I have seen. So I think there is a change which has happened with respect to the integration in the fund administration business.
Okay, cool. Thank you. We'll have to take the most important part, which is talent, right? Because everything about GCCs is talent. So each one of you can tell me, how do you attract talent, retain talent, and also what is the leadership structure in each of your organization? How is it? Is there, we know what it works like in a big four. We've got partners and stuff like that. So what is it in the India office? And what are the aspirations of talent today? What are they aspiring for? What do they want? So whoever wants, we can start with Abhinav. We can go circle first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think
Yeah.
talent retention is something that's core, right? I think many of the professionals here in this panel spend a lot of time on that. And the attraction bit starts with the value proposition that we can bring in, right? From I mean, when we're looking for an experienced lateral hire, is especially when you're from coming from a practice where probably you're not used to the end-to-end process, you're doing more task-driven. What we gauge primarily is what is the reason for the movement. Do they really enjoy the end-to-end process, and is that the key reason for them to change? Right. Only if we get that comfort, that's when the alignment happens with the organization. So I think that is one key. The second bit is when we hire professionals, right? They come, I mean, chartered accountancy, someone doing a CA, CPA, yeah, great. Somebody people know that you have the skill set, and an organization has probably vetted your knowledge in terms of exams and you passing it or doing a CPA. But does that really translate into an effective job, in effective service delivery? Maybe, may not be. And that's where the organization comes in, when in terms of a lot of support, right? It could be technical, it could be mentorship, it could be coaching. At Within, we do have a unique unique thing. We have professional coaches for many of our professionals. So it's not just that you are assigned to some manager who's also a CA, probably 5 years experience than you. It doesn't work that way. So we make sure that the coachee relationship is tagged. It depends on the personality. We do disc assessments for all our professionals. We make sure that the alignment really happens. That has really helped us in making sure that these people understand our values, right? They understand where they're heading to. So that has really focused. We've been focusing a lot more on that. And one more thing unique is I don't see it in a big four. Maybe things have changed. We also have professional coaches or coaches assigned for our professionals from the US office as well. It's no longer just you work with India teams. You also have coaches. Specifically at a senior and above, we make sure that they have US and above coaches, because the dynamics are different. They understand the niche, they understand the practice, and the tips that they give, right, from a coaching standpoint, really helps them grow as professionals in the organization. So that's there. And from an organization structure standpoint, yes, we do. Just like other organizations, we have the staff level, senior, getting into an associate manager, managers, associate director, director. Uh, that's where we are at this point. And of course, there are talks in terms of getting in designations about principal and above that as well in the next few years. So that's where we are.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Prasamit?
Yeah, so the way I see it is it's again it goes in four ways, right? So one is R&R, which I've said, right? It's more recruitment and retention, right? So we what we believe is we should have a proper policies, proper structure to do that, right? It's not about just hiring because you got a request, right? You have to make sure that person is aligned to the objective of not only with Sapro but as well as the client form, right? Which is again a CPA form at EY as well, right? We used to see that, right? We just don't bring in because somebody's coming in. So I think having the right filters is very important. And then retention, it's not about money these days, right? So it has to be the package of everything, right? Software things, financial things, and benefits and everything, right? Growth prospects. So I think R&R is very important. Second pillar I would say is again R&R, which is your ratings, right? So the ratings and your PMS systems, right? So that is you should have defined the tone at the top. Then you kind of percolate down to the team in terms of the objectives. Everybody aligns with that objective, and then you gauge it, right? It should be structured process that everybody knows on a given day what they are running towards, right? Otherwise, it's a little bit of a mess, and everybody's doing it, and obviously will get the right recognition at the end of the day. The third thing for me is continuous learning, right? So this is very important in our industry because it's a service industry, right? It is not about learning about the new forms, new compliances, new on the technical and accounting side, but also what's disrupting the market, right? More on the IT part of things, how AI is coming in, how they can upskill themselves to kind of talk that language when you're going to the client. So those are the things that are very important, and also the knowledge transfer with the online team members, right? So that has to be in a continuous process. And the last thing, what I believe is the X factor, which I think Karthik mentioned a little bit, right? It is more on the softer skills, making them ready for the next level, right? So this is something you have to provide them, right? Because everybody is coming, living a lot of things at home and coming to work. So these are things that are very important that we provide as a package. And the way I do it is pretty much these four buckets, and I feel this is a good kind of summarizes everything that one can get out of it from working with the firm.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sumit, you were, yeah.
The other
Yeah.
important thing would be, what value or how are you upskilling a particular person in his professional journey? That is very important to retain the right talent, because it's not only about the money every time. Okay, whether they aspire to become a leader within your organization, whether your organization is giving them that opportunity, whether they see that foresight that there is an opportunity for me to take up leadership roles in this particular organization. So all these factor plays a very important role to retain the right talent. So it is not only about money, it's not only about technically giving him training so he can be technically very sound. It is an entire package, how you can retain a particular talent. So every aspect plays a very important role in retaining the right talent.
Okay. Sumit,
And
what is,
just
yeah, I'll just ask Sumit a question. Sumit, what is the leadership structure at PKF? Like,
Okay,
what
so
can
we have,
somebody expect if they join in?
yeah, similar to other firms, like we have staff, associate, senior associate, we have supervisors, managers, we have directors, and we also have partners in India. So it again depends on firm to firm, but as a strategy, or as an extension of the global team. So they also have a partner designation in India, where a particular partner in India automatically becomes a partner in their main entity in US. It's not only they are a partner in the Indian entity, they become a partner in the global entity.
Okay. Okay. And so far, have you all had a lot of partners moving up? Is it going to increase?
Yeah, definitely. So I was the first, one to be made a partner at the global level. Definitely in the upcoming years, definitely we have more partners coming up from India as well.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Samit, sorry, you were saying something.
Yeah, just to add again, I think everyone is bang on their retention and engaging talent. But one important thing is as CPA firms, we focus on a lot of hours, billable hours, right? And I think that's one of the key element where people have been differentiating while changing jobs, right? I think that's important where, we all have recognized that the more the billable hours, the better. I think that's not the theme now post COVID, because people have been focusing a lot on well-being, mental health, and they want to make sure that their billable hours are not kind of pressurizing them to overwork in the busy season. So that's something we have, at least our firm has recognized, where um, it's very unique to our firm, where in the non-busy season our expectation is not 40 hours a week. It's much less than 40 hours a week of billable hours. That's the expectation which our firm has put on our professionals. So I think billable hours is another thing where we need to differentiate ourselves from other firms, where that's how you can also retain good talent.
Okay.
And what, there is one question which I read on the screen is the iteration rate, and this is a very interesting topic, and very close to many of our heart. But it again, Alloy Days is a relatively new setup, but I'll give my thoughts based on my 17-18 years
Yeah.
of experience. Um, the retention rate or the turnover rates has gone significantly up in the last 4 to 5 years since COVID, and COVID has changed many things for good and bad. Okay, since the pandemic, I think considerations, many employees give consideration even to other factors and not only compensation. Now those considerations are like whether the company is offering a hybrid model or versus fully remote, or work from home. That's one of the key factor which many employees consider while changing job, and then that impacts any company's iteration rate, right? Even non-monetary benefits like health insurance for self versus parents, that has changed. That has been a factor. Even many people have been asking us of late when we hire people, um, right? Apart from this, there is a very high turnover in the initial phase of everyone's career. I've seen many people, like in the age group, in the post experience age group of 0 to 5 years, they those young professionals have been changing jobs every 2 years. That's the average which I've seen. And I think it's because they have been facing burnout due to long hours, intense work during the busy season, and all those things, right? And people have been quite quick in taking those decisions in the last few years, right? And one of the key element which I have seen is the growth in the emerging cities like tier 2 and tier 3. I see that PKF, O'Connor Davis, and Eisner has been having offices in different locations. I think that's another thing which drives employees or professionals to change locations, because that may be closer to their hometown, or they are kind of shifting back to their families and all those things. So compensation and career growth has been one of the element for iteration, but apart from that, this all the other factors also do impact an individual while changing their jobs. I'll be kind of very honest on this job. We had few resignations, and 90% of the resignations is because of location. Like they wanted to go back to their hometown because of family reasons or whatever that may be. So that's one of the hard hitting factor of today's time, but that's what it is.
Thank you. That's some great pointers. Karthik, yes.
I think I think I have the unenviable task of going last on this one, but I think I will tell you that I think it's on similar lines to what everyone mentioned. But what we look for when we're especially looking to attract talent, right? I think is one of the things that we primarily look at for ourselves is, and it's a saying that we have is love what we do and do what we love. I think that is very important. And I know Abhinav mentioned it right at the start. Is we want to be very clear in terms of when we are looking to attract, whether it's somebody gets coming in as a fresher or somebody who's coming in with experience, is what are their career aspirations? What are the overall professional aspirations that they have? And how does that align with that? And when we do technically the formal interview process, we voluntarily ask and request the candidates to evaluate our organization from every aspect of it, to ensure that that's a good fit in terms of the overall value goals that you would have, because we go through our value proposition, and just not from a work perspective, but overall what we stand for, and whether that aligns with with their own set of values. and in terms of overall development. And I think we all touched upon it. Yes, we're going to do the technical work, but the thing that we are able to retain, I think, is how we are in the value chain and how you're able to kind of be able to groom yourself and nurture yourself, I would say, from overall development. Because I think many of us would know that there are a lot of technical folks who have, brilliant in what they do, but when they don't develop their other skill sets, all-around personality, so to speak, it becomes a challenge. Because how do they progress to some of the higher levels? Because you want to promote them, you want to get them to to become managers and kick on from there. But if they don't develop themselves in every way, pure technical work is a foundation. It's only going to get you so far. You need to have that foundation. Without foundation, you can't build anything. But it's only going to build it up to a certain level. You got to add more blocks to that, or build something more on that. I think that is very important. So all-round development, I think, has to be a focus, and that's very important when we evaluate and we look to retain is how do we give them that opportunity. And I think, and I touched upon it earlier, I think the way we're able to retain is we're able to run a lot of global initiatives. So whether it's technical or non-technical initiatives for the firm sitting right out of India. And it's, again, we talk about leadership. Leadership is just not defined, way we look at it, is not defined by titles alone. Yes, the titles have a kind of manifest certain roles and responsibilities, but you can be a staff one and you can be a leader. It's not defined. It's not, it's not just left to the managing directors or the directors or the senior managers of the world. Leadership is defined by what you do, what actions you take, and how you conduct yourself. So we foster that in taking up in any initiative that you want to take. And I'll tell you the interesting thing that we had in one of the interviews that I took. One of the questions that I asked is that, apart from all the, from the candidate that they asked me was, I really want to know what are all the CSR activities that your organization has done in the last 12 months. And I thought that was a great question because, it gave us kind of food for thought in terms of how when we are putting our kind of our value proposition out there, and we walk them through it. I think it's now people, what we see is just not about, I talked about just not what you do at work and how you're growing professionally, but how are you creating an impact around you. And I think that is very, very important in retaining and engaging talent as well, because people will have different things that they're going to get excited about. Somebody is going to be interested in being in from the fitness side of it. Somebody is going to be on the cultural side of it. Somebody will have a lot of resonate with a lot of the employee resource groups, as we call it, or kind of certain value systems regarding to foundations and charitable organizations. So how do you build an ecosystem which is going to cater to everybody's not going to be interested in everything, but how do you have an ecosystem where it caters to everyone and how they're able to add value? They feel pride in what they're doing. I think it's very important that they feel pride in what they're doing. I think that's how we look at it in being able to attract, retain, and engage. And I think there are, of course, professional development courses, there are all the other things in R&R we talked about. I think this, I think that's I think it's on similar lines. But at the end of the day, again, one of the things that we look at is also how many leaders are we able to develop. I think that's one of the core things that we look at to say it's just not about getting the work done. The work will get done, one way or the other. But how are we able to develop leaders within the organization? And from a structure perspective, if I have to talk about, I think it's very similar from staff 1 to staff 2. You can only become senior, then deputy managers, senior managers, associate directors, and managing directors, and that's how we are. And of course, we're exploring to see how we can get partners in India as well. But again, the designations are the designations. Where we don't look at designations. They have their importance and relevance. But we want to have anybody who can be a leader in an organization. Everybody is a leader, depending on what they do and what they want to do.
Okay, cool. So, just very, very quickly, because we just got like 3 to 4 minutes right now. I just want to understand, do you all have CPA sponsorship? And as Sumit says, at PKF, they also have a leadership to the US firm, right? So very quickly, what is it with him? Do you all sponsor CPA? Is it work from home model? Do you all have a hybrid model?
Yeah, we do have a hybrid model, 3 days from office, 2 days from home. And yes, we do sponsor the CPA program as well.
Okay, cool. What about Karthik?
Yeah, we have not only for CPA, we have it for multiple courses because our business spans across. So whether it is enrolled agent or whether it is CFA, whether it is CMA, we sponsor to a lot of different qualifications. And again, it's not limited to that. If there is a need, if there's a technology course that needs to be taken up, it's again business driven and a need for what the certification brings to the table, to the individual, to the business, and then we go on to that. I think from a flexibility perspective, I can tell you that even in our employee handbook, even before the pandemic came in, we always had a work from home option available. that people could always take. So even the pandemic really did not change anything for us in that regard, because we already had it, and we've always maintained that flexibility. And what we believe again is not one size fits all, because what is flexibility to me might be very different than what is flexibility to you or to everyone on this call. And we work pretty much on an individual basis to identify what that means to you and how we can make it work for you.
Okay, amazing. Samit, would you want to take this? Keep it very short.
Yeah, so we do sponsor CPA, EA, and CMA for now. Of course, as Karthik mentioned, it's a business case requirement as we grow. But and I kind of completely agree with what Karthik has mentioned, that we do have a flexibility model. We do not have a hybrid or a work from home model, and I think that perfectly works for us, because flexibility is very individual, right? It's different for different people, and that's what we want to kind of recognize and give that flexibility to our people as and when required.
Okay. Thank you. I know we could really talk a lot about this, and each of you will have amazing insights, but I'll just take up one question right now. Okay. Sumit, you want to add about PKF?
Yeah, okay. So similar to how Karthik said, we do sponsor CPAs, SEMA, CISA, correct? And again, it enroll agents, and again, it depends on business needs. If there are any new certification which are required or which comes up, so definitely we go ahead and we approve that as well. Correct. So, and as far as hybrid model is concerned, we do have a hybrid model in place wherein people are supposed to work from office for 2 days and they have flexibility for the remaining 3 days. However, we do have folks who are coming to our office on five days as well. So it all depends on individual. But as a practice or as a policy, we have 2 days from office and 3 days from home.
Okay, cool. I have this last question. For a lot of firms that enter India, right? A lot of them don't even make it. Correct? You guys have thankfully made it and stabilized the venture, but a lot don't make it. So very quickly, what is it that works? And yeah, anyone who would want to take it?
See, I would say the first thing would be, transparency and honesty. Correct. It's very important that you have a transparent relationship with your US leadership. Correct. They should have confidence and trust in you, because without trust and confidence, definitely you will not be able to set up anything in India. Correct. Once you establish the trust with them, then it's a streamless process. They would be helping you out in each and every step to establish a GCC in India. Correct. So the trust and transparency plays a very important role as far as setting up a individual or a 100% owned subsidiary in India is concerned.
Okay. And many of you have entered India through an M&A model, right? If I would want to highlight this, because we have one question, it's not just reflecting.
I think more from an M&A. I think we had a lot of M&As come through. I think M&A is just an aspect of it. I think to what Smith just mentioned, I think there is no one recipe for success, but I think what is inherent is that there has got to be a vision, and in India has got to be a strategy. It is not, it is by choice that you're coming here, not because you have no other option available. I think that's a very important aspect, and having the commitment to it as well, because things may not be rosy. Things may not progress the way you might have intended, but when you're committed to the cause, I think you'll always find a way through, and you'll be able to persevere. I think that is very important, and I think again the dynamics comes through. I think both sides, from the US as well as from the India side, where again, as you pointed out, you got to have the transparency and the honesty and saying, hey, yeah, this is not working well. And we need to do something about it, and there could be various aspects within that. But being able to have that frank and honest dialogue, and then assessing, and then making changes. But I think it has to be at a very, very grassroots level or a basic level, I would say.
Yeah.
You need to have that India as part of your firm-wide strategy, and this is what you want to do, not because you have no other choice. I think that is going to be very, very critical. I think that's going to differentiate, because in the long run, that's what's going to differentiate. When things will be good, things will be good for everyone. But when things might get tough, that's where you're going to see the kind of differentiate between the chaff from the wheat, so to speak.
Karthik, when I was talking to you last time, you mentioned that understanding the ownership structure is very important for people to pave their career path, right? What's the ownership structure? So can we talk about this very quickly, or it could be a topic for another panel? Yeah.
It's a broad topic, but I think I can definitely talk about. I think the way it's and I briefly touched upon it at the start, right? How traditionally CPA firms have operated and I think have been owned has gone through a lot of change, and I know that we brought in kind of, I would say, the big change. There are multiple models out there in terms of right now for ownership structure, including the ESOP structure, and having an alternative investor coming in, a lot of private equity deals and firms coming into the picture as well. I think that is redefined in terms of how the accounting industry is operating, and I think also the pace at which some of the growth and M&A that is stemming from there. I think so. I think for people to understand that this is a fast and a hyper growth industry right now, which means that's the pace that everybody is going to be setting. And people might be different organizations will be probably different in that trajectory, but everybody's in that trajectory, to be very honest with in that aspect. And there's going to be a lot of consolidation. I think that's what we're seeing within the industry, within the accounting industry. I think that's a natural evolution as a lot of money coming in, and for other operational reasons as well. That for you to be able to sustain and grow, because just getting along or just keeping the growth curve constant is not going to be enough. I think you got to be growing at a positive click, and for that to happen, a lot of the consolidation is coming through the industry as well. So the ownership structure is defined, it's changed that. Pandemic has changed that as well. So all of that bringing together the industry, I think is very vibrant, and that's what has happened in the last 3.5 years or 4 years, so to speak. And I think what's going to evolve is going to be interesting for all of us. I think there'll be more changes have, which will disrupt the accounting industry in a good way. And those are all, again, like I said, those are all opportunities for us to be able to hopefully be nimble enough to be able to adapt and kind of pivot and do what we can, take it further a notch. So yeah, that's what I would say. Like I said, that's a big topic, but we can dwell into it. Spend a lot of time there, but I'll stop here.
Okay. Thank you so much. My last question to all of you is: what is 2025 now? What are you looking at 2025 and this decade ahead? Very quickly, Abhi, would you want to start with you to close this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think where we are extremely positioned well with our current setup. And what we want to do is enhance the experience of our professionals, right? It could be much more integration to the US. It could be more of them understanding from a cultural standpoint the US. A lot more rotations, both inbound and outbound, and also at some point evaluate how we are going to really grow, right, in the next 1 or 2 years span. So things are really positioned well for us, and we are extremely excited for this year and the upcoming 2 years. And a lot of mergers happening in the US, in the back end, and that's going to fuel a lot of our growth and a lot of our strategies for the next couple of years. So very excited for the upcoming 2 years.
Thank you. Yes, Pratham, do you want to take your 2025?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously, we have to consistently work on changing the mindset from cost arbitrage model to value creation, right? So that should be imbibed in all the employees, because they should not feel it's just an outsource model. It doesn't work, right? Outsource sometimes has a negative connotation, but that's not true, right? So there are a lot of things, these guys are doing good. So that's a reason that is very important that we imbibe that as part of the family or whichever client they work for. Secondly, we also keep our focus on the tier two cities, which Samit kind of you did too, right? Because as we are getting expensive in the metros, right, we have to also see the cost benefit for our clients. So that's the reason we have to keep our eyes, ears open and see where is the right talent pool, untapped pool, where is the government support for that region, and where we can kind of do that. And lastly is the technology, right? So I think we need to accept the fact that within the next 3-4 years everything will have at least some amount of AI, RMP, RPM, anything, right? You could talk about all the fancy emerging technologies in Byte. So it's very important that we kind of take that, understand that, and try to see how we can grow along with that whole shift. So these are a few things I think we'll take forward.
Okay, thank you. Sumit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that
Okay.
again, as we are very well positioned to fuel the next growth phase as far as India is concerned, because as Karthik mentioned, like we as a firm as well, we ended up taking an private equity investment in November 2024, correct? So the short term vision or the vision for us for the next 2 years is to have 25% of the workforce or the total billable hours from India. we are currently positioned at around close to 9.5%. So next 2 to 3 years, we foresee that if we can, we target 25% of the total workforce and the billable hours to happen from India. So that is gonna fuel the next phase of growth for PKF Cognitives in India.
That's very well put. Amazing. Karthik, over to you.
Thank you. I think the way we look at it, and we are further along the journey, I think two key things that I would say, and I'm going to club it together. One of them is innovation and growth. I think, and if you look at growth, I think is just not growth in terms of billable hours, in terms of numbers, headcount, but I think growth in the value chain. We're looking to add on to bring on more new services and new service lines and kind of solutions and products that we can bring to the table, and that's probably driven through innovation as well. So we're looking to really kick on from the technology side of it, and just not limited to technology. Technology is an enabler, but really build innovation, kind of deep rooted within our culture. I think that's what we're focusing on. Of course, a lot of M&A continues to happen, and as we bring them on board, and as we integrate them with India, I think that's always going to be the focus. Again, we have been very, very active. We have had about close to 20 combinations. I don't think that that pace is going to reduce in the upcoming year or two, and that's what we're looking to do in terms of 2025 and in the year beyond that.
Thank you. Samit, over to you.
Yeah, I think again, the growth will be one of the factor for us. We have started with audit and tax. We kind of ventured into consulting this year, and hoping to get more service lines in India in 2025. Two of the key elements which we are aiming for in the next couple of years is integration. Currently we are less than 10% as we are new, and also the experience, not only experience to the employees here, but the experience for our US team also. I think that will also fuel our growth in the future. And just one thing which I'm excited is we'll be opening our new office soon in Bangalore. So that's something to look out for in the space.
Congratulations. That's amazing, guys. We're also going to make a PDF with all your responses, and I'll also connect with you again to understand a little more, because only so much can be covered in the 2 hours that we have, right? We have to take this last question from Tushar, because everybody wants to know about this. Who would want to take it? One person can take it. Sumit, would you want to take it? Because
Yeah, sure.
you had your... Yeah.
Most of you have a deep industry in the respective fields you are heading. Someone is looking to start up fresh and outsourcing to start with accounting, booking, taxation, and popularizing. Again, this is a very subjective answer. There is no one answer to this question. Correct? It depends whether you're fueling or you're planning to set up through an M&A, or you're trying to set up afresh. Okay, if you want to set up afresh, it's not easy to set up afresh, because you need to have contacts, you need to have a team in US who are ready to outsource, or you're ready to send work to India. Because again, it's not only they, any client would always require a local presence. Okay, I've seen, like, I might others might disagree with me, but based on my experience, at least then they need to have someone who they can speak to during US hours, unless and until you have a 24/7 operations in India. Correct? So again, if you want to set up a firm, again, you need to have the right contacts, okay, who are ready to outsource, or you're ready to send work to India. Okay, once you have that, what you can do is you can there are legal compliance, you need to take care of all the setup issues in India. Okay, again, whether you want to do a joint venture, or whether you are opening up 100% owned subsidiary of a firm in of a US firm, it all depends what kind of structure you want to set up. Correct? Once you have decided, okay, it's going to be a joint venture, or it's going to be an outsourcing firm like Sepro. Correct? Then you decide what kind of structure you want to establish in India, whether it's going to be a LLP, it's going to be a private limited company. Correct? After doing that, you do all the legal compliances, you set up the firm in India, and you start recruiting, and that's how you operate, and that's how you set up a firm.
Okay, cool. I know this is the question that can go on forever, right? And it's a very important one. I think Sapro would be ideal to answer this, but I guess now we'll wrap the conversation. Otherwise, it will, but I'll definitely cover it in our PDF that we're doing. Okay. So, guys, thank you so much for the time on a Saturday morning. For you, joining our panel and so happily saying yes. And everybody who attended it, who took out the time to stay through, thank you so much. I know I have not taken a few questions, but I will. Okay. We'll also do, from now, we'll just have another 15 minutes on Zoom. We've got a few finance ready readers who will have a few more questions. This was, I was supposed to do this on Zoom, but it was not streaming correctly. Like Zoom was not streaming right on LinkedIn. So I said, let's use StreamYard. Just 10 more minutes, max 10 to 15 more minutes. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for joining in. Thanks a lot for the time, and thank you guys. This really means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
We enjoyed this
Have a
Saturday
great
morning.
weekend.
Thank you so much. I hope I've done justice, you guys. Like, thank you. So I'll just end the stream. You all will have to wait for a minute, and thank you everyone again for joining. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll end the stream.